actually first wanted to become a journalist, but a lot of friends in my college thought that if I go for a diplomatic career, that would be good because I was able to speak some foreign languages like English, French, and German. So I just tried my luck. That time, if you want to become a diplomat, you have to pass an exam, a national exam. So I tried it and I passed. So I didn't have any chance to go for a journalistic career. My first posting was also in New York when South Korea was not yet a member of the United Nations in 1985. 1985, New York was not like New York now. New York was much more dangerous and dirty in general. But I enjoyed my posting there, and I thought I liked New York. So I went back there 3 times more. So altogether I had 4 postings in New York City and, spanning over 10 years. Yes, actually, during my last posting as South Korean ambassador to the United Nations, my residence was just a couple of blocks from Asia Society headquarters. So I went to their events quite often. And even before that, even in my previous postings, I also knew how active Asia Society is in the United States. I think Asia Society is one of the first non-governmental organizations in the US that was focusing on Asian issues, Asian affairs, Asian culture, which was not, Americans were not too familiar with it, let's say 50, 60 years ago. So that was, I think for all Asian countries, what Asia Society has been doing was really great and helped a lot. Well, the modern history of South Korea has a great deal to do with the United Nations. It's no exaggeration. South Korea got independence in 1945 when the United Nations was created. And even after that, the war in 1950, the Korean War, was probably the first most serious challenge to the United Nations because the world body was created to maintain peace and prevent a war. And 5 years after the UN's creation, there was this full-scale real war threatening the peace of the whole world. So the United Nations responded to that. And even after that, ironically, South Korea and North Korea, the two Koreas, became UN members quite late, in 1991. So after, over 40 years of absence, we were able to join the UN membership. But after that, South Korea made a lot of efforts to contribute and to participate in the activities of the United Nations. And unfortunately, our brothers in North Korea are making more problems than contribution. But some issues involving North Korea have been put on the agenda of the United Nations. For many years, like North Korean nuclear issue or human rights issue. But good or bad, I think the two Koreas have had a great deal to do with the United Nations work. The United Nations membership has 193 countries, That's not all the countries in the world. There are a few remaining countries staying outside the UN, but you can say that most nations in the world are members of the United Nations. And we usually say the United Nations is a universal international organization, which means that in terms of its membership or its work, coverage of issues, it is universal, dealing with all the issues and all the problems in our world. I know that out there, even in Korea, there are a lot of young people who are interested in working for international organizations like the United Nations. I think I would like to encourage them to do so. To be frank, it's not easy to have an opportunity to work for the United Nations, but there are many ways of joining what is called international public service. So if you are an international public servant, you work for organizations like United Nations or other international organizations. So I think those who are interested should always try to keep up with what is happening in the world, what these international bodies are doing, and then there will always be opportunities out there. Definitely, I think during my time in the foreign service, South Korea grew a lot as a nation. I think during my time in the Korean Foreign Service, South Korea grew dramatically in terms of its international engagements. In 1985, when I first had my posting in South Korea's observer mission to the United Nations, our mission was observer at that time. Not too many people knew where Korea was. So the only thing they remembered about Korea was the Korean War that took place many years ago. South Korea's per capita GDP was still very low, but Korea joined OECD in 1996 and joined the club of advanced economies. And even after 2000, South Korea made a dramatic change in terms of our visibility internationally, as well as our economic prowess. So I should say that all happened just over one generation, just in 30, 40 years. Well, Save the Children is one of the largest non-governmental organizations in the world. And actually, Save the Children is the oldest NGO in the world because it started in 1919 when a British lady named Eglantine Japp thought that they should help children in Germany and Austria, which lost the war, the First World War. So she thought that, no matter where these children are, no matter what kind of culture or religion they have, children are all the future of humanity. So we should help them. So Britain won a war over Germany, but she thought we should help children in Germany because, even if we fought a war with Germany, that's not gonna that's not going to last forever. We will be friends, and whether it's German children or British children, they represent the future of humanity. So that was how Save the Children started out. And actually, because Eglantine Jap, she went to Geneva and spent the rest of her life in Geneva, and she drafted what was later called World Declaration on the Rights of the Child in 1924, which was adopted by the League of Nations, and then some 50 years later or 40 years later, it was adopted again by the United Nations, and it became kind of foundation for the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989. Well, young people can be involved in the work of Save the Children in many different ways. We have kind of supporters among college students, supporters for work of Save the Children. Sometimes they can work as volunteers. Sometimes they can work as interns. There are many ways where some of them can be eventually employed by Save the Children Korea. Also, they can go out to the world, and Save the Children is a global organization, so they need a lot of activists. I like to advise them to be open-minded. So a lot of times we think we are open-minded, but when we actually respond to some international issues, let's say involving Japan, involving China, what comes to our mind and how we respond to them, a lot of times cannot be exactly called being open-minded, because we are all kind of judgmental on things that are happening around us. So it is not easy to become truly open-minded. But that's something we need in our world, I think, because our world is now being globalized very dramatically, and we have to live with other people. In the past, let's say 30, 40 years ago, our kind of span of concern, span of activities was very limited, There were not too many people who had to interact with people outside Korea. But now, everyone, to a certain extent, has to be international and has to be involved in activities with other countries and has to be exchanged with other people. So in this age of globalization, I think to be open-minded is probably the most important quality for a global citizen. So I would like to encourage all young people who would like to go out of Korea and work in international arena. I would like to advise them to be global citizens. Well, speaking foreign languages is important. I don't know these IT technologies will come up with universal translator shortly, but that will probably help all of us a lot. But until then, you have to be able to speak a foreign language, especially English is very important. So, but I see a lot of young people these days have a good command of English. So I want to tell them to keep it up and always try to be engaged with people who speak languages other than Korean.